Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Eric Matisik, and I'm the Executive Director of Project X-ITE. On behalf of our project and program, we welcome you all here today to our X-ITE speaker series for an incredible topic that we're talking about today, which is veteran entrepreneurship. Since we last met, we've had some really great new additions. I'd love to announce that Nina Sharma is now our Associate Director. Wherever Nina is when you came in, she's the doer of all awesome things. If it's terrific, she did it. If it's not terrific, I'll take responsibility for it. So the other addition we had is Matt Rutherford, who's our new faculty director. Matt, you want to stand up and say hello? Matt's a professor full professor in computer science, and really is helping us connect all the curricular aspects of Project X-ITE around campus to the great programmatic elements that we're doing. Project X-ITE at its core really exists to connect all of the university resources to advance innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship in the region and beyond to the world. Through that process, we do three core things within our program today. First of all, we deeply engage students in experiments. Through Matt's leadership, we lead deeply engaged student internships, which in spring of 2017, we'll be launching our first fleet of 5 of these experiences. And these are student teams that are deployed in deep experiential cross-discipline internships in high-growth companies right here in the city with faculty oversight to bring our students as close to the work environment for entrepreneurship and innovation as possible. The second thing that we do is our Meeting of the Minds, which you're enjoying one of those today. And it composes speaker series throughout the year, as well as large-scale summits that really frame up the most innovative and kind of disruptive technology activities that are happening in the region and in the industry, where we can really convene the student community, the community at large, and our faculty and scholarship community together to really embrace those deep topics of discussion. And the third thing that we're doing is providing innovation resources to students who are investigating and exploring entrepreneurship for the first time, and those students who have great entrepreneurial ideas, catalyzing those in our entrepreneurial community. The program was started a year ago. It was founded by 3 of our core founding deans, J.B. Holston in the School of Engineering, Brent Crite in the School of Business, and Bruce Smith in the School of College of Law. And since then, the program has continued to expand to be hyper-inclusive across the disciplines, and we really envision entrepreneurship and an entrepreneurial mindset and an innovation mindset being critical to the future of the way that our students engage in the world. So today, we have a really special topic, which is veterans and entrepreneurship. It's really important because when you think about entrepreneurship at its core, veterans are uniquely situated to be spectacular entrepreneurs. When you think of some of the greats that walk in our midst, Phil Knight, who's the founder of Nike, served in the Army. Fred Smith and from FedEx and Bob Parsons from GoDaddy, both served in the Vietnam War. And I think some of the things that you'll notice in our veteran entrepreneurs is that there's 3 core characteristics that they almost all have in common. First, from a leadership perspective, they have some of the best leadership training in the world. When you bring that core leadership training that's across the military branches into our business environment, the impact is great. The second is that they're mission focused. I think one of the exciting things to talk about today is how mission really impacts outcomes. Being mission focused, they know how to assemble teams, they know how to motivate, and they know how to move folks towards a common goal. And the last is really the art of execution. At its core, the military and veterans are steeped through leadership, and through the ability to build great teams, that execution becomes not only something they talk about, it becomes innate in their discipline to be able to react and execute at all levels. That combination of leadership skills inside of an entrepreneurial environment is absolutely critical, and I think today we've got a really great panel, all 3 veterans that are going to be able to delve into the mechanics of the advantages and disadvantages of going into entrepreneurship as a veteran, but also some of the benefits and background that really uniquely situates them, and for not only to be great leaders, but for us to be able to interact with them in the workplace. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our 3 panelists to the stage. First, Josh Anderson, who's no stranger to the University of Denver, as well as our early stage organizations. Come up and take a seat, Josh. After cutting his teeth consulting with large organizations like Google and Vail Resorts and Accenture, where he built their military recruiting program, Josh also has helped great startup companies here in Colorado, such as SendGrid, Elo, Parkify, Ibotta, and Full Contact, do their recruiting. He's also a mentor of the Galvanized community, and he's been an organizer of Startup Week since beginning, Denver Startup Week. Thank you so much. And he's also spent 5 years on active duty in the Marine Corps, leading intelligence operations for Special Ops Capable Unit during the 2 expeditionary deployments over a dozen countries. Josh is now the leader of, is now at Patriot Bootcamp to develop partnerships and programs that will equip military veterans and their spouses for greater successes as entrepreneurs. So let's please welcome Josh to the stage. Next up, we have Nick Gray, who's the co-founder and CEO of HyprLoco, a local software innovation company that powers intelligent environments. Before HyprLoco, he served as a platoon communications non-commissioned officer in the United States Army from 2004 to 2007. While deployed in Baghdad to support Operation Iraqi Freedom, he recognized the need for real-time location intelligence within buildings to understand the positions of individuals, both friend and foe. This is where the vision for HyprLoco was born. And Gray, who was honorably discharged in 2007, moved to Colorado in 2008, where he used the post-9/11 GI Bill to obtain a bachelor's in science and business management. Outside of working in HyprLoco, he's a veteran advocate focusing on suicide prevention. Let's welcome him as well. And this great discussion today is going to be moderated by one of our very own, Dr. Jacob Hyde, a veteran of the Iraq War who received his doctorate in psychology from Adler University. For those, he's spoken this topic many times in our recent DU symposium. Dr. Hyde has given some terrific presentations, and he's most recently conducted postdoctorate fellowship training in health psychology and has been primary care at the Phoenix VA Medical Center, where he designed and led the integration of the primary care and psychology fellowship and internal medicine residency training programs within the primary care department. That was a mouthful, but it was awesome. Dr. Hyde has a particular interest in behavioral medicine issues affecting military members and veterans like gastrointestinal illness and eating-related disorders. Dr. Hyde's current research is in the Sturm specialty in military psychology and is funded by the Colorado Brain Injury Program. He's also a faculty advisor to DU's Student Veteran Association, and I believe we have the president here today. Raise your hand. Stand up and introduce yourself. And he's also supported entrepreneurial program and working with Stephen Miller as well. So thank you so much for being here. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our moderator to go ahead and get our discussion started. Thank you all for being here for this great installation of our Project X-ITE speaker series. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Good, because I'm going to do a lot of talking. No, I'm just kidding. These guys are going to do most of the talking. You know, first of all, I want to say thanks for having us out. Thanks for putting 3 veterans on a stage for something different and not just to have a flyover or salute at a football game. It's a lot nicer to have veterans talk about their successes. Tonight, I think or this afternoon, we're going to talk a bit about how these 2 gentlemen have challenged the narrative of young veterans. So many young veterans come back with some issues. So many young veterans transition out of the military with issues, but so many don't. And so many come out of the military doing extremely well. And even though some hit roadblocks, they end up founding companies. They end up becoming professors. They end up mentoring young people. They end up doing fantastic things. And so there are 3 veterans sitting on the stage, all deployed to the same area of the world over there at the same time. And we have all 3 taken sort of divergent paths, but yet we've ended up on the same stage together. So these 2 gentlemen who are going to introduce themselves are going to tell you a bit about their work. Then we're going to have a discussion about why veterans and veteran leadership really does kind of change the way that business is operating and has been changing the way that business is operating, how these 2 gentlemen are doing that. And then we'll talk a little bit about how personal experience and non-traditional education is something I think we need to look a little bit more into. So without further ado, maybe Josh, you could introduce yourself and start us off.
So I'm Josh Anderson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Patriot Bootcamp, a co-founder along with Nick of the Colorado Alliance for Veteran Entrepreneurship, and the rest of my professional narrative, Eric outlined nicely. I'm a 5-year active duty veteran of the Marine Corps from 2002 to 2007. What's that?
Take that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that better? 5-year veteran of active duty Marine Corps, 2 deployments overseas. And I think in many ways, probably a little bit of a different experience and narrative from Nick in that I didn't see a lot of direct combat. I deployed a lot of intelligence assets to a lot of countries in 3 continents, but was very much a pogue in garrison in most cases.
A pogue is, though?
Pogue is a person other than a grunt. And so lived a charmed life by comparison, I think, to what many Marines and service members experienced during the current conflicts. But I think very similar in that we came back and were sort of thrust back into a civilian world that felt very foreign and had to sort of figure out how to reintegrate without a lot of resources. I think we're fortunate now, certainly more than a decade ago, that there's a lot more resources and interest in helping veterans reintegrate in meaningful ways and find their path. But it's still quite difficult, regardless of what your experience was. So I'm hoping we can unearth and discuss some of that today. But I'm really happy to be here and honored that all of you came out for this.
Nick, when you want to give us a little bit more than just your bio?
Just my bio. No, I'll talk a little more than that.
Okay.
So for me, I'll kind of start back from the beginning a little bit. So I was born and raised in Eugene, Oregon. And I actually started my first business when I was 10 years old. I think everybody probably had a lawn mowing service of some sort, or ice cream stand, or lemonade stand. I had a lawn mowing service, but I had differentiated myself a little bit as to where I had business cards, and it was Nick's Mowing Service, and the tagline was "Be there in the nick of time." So I can't give all the credit to myself on that. My mom is actually the one that really helped out with that. But I had a loyalty program put to there, punch cards and all that stuff, and we didn't have a successful exit by any means, but continued to move along in my entrepreneurial career. But it started working in the restaurants when I was 14, and then started actually managing and opening restaurants when I was 19. Was recruited by another regional franchise group to be on a managing partner path when I was 21. So I started doing that, and then I was offered a managing partnership with another small Italian restaurant chain when I was 23. Took that. That was an absolute complete disaster. Great ideas, knew what I was doing, but my communication skills were just absolutely poor. Particularly when we're dealing with people that were 30 years older than me. But it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me for my entire life. It really was the pivotal point where I actually had taken an opportunity to really reflect on those amazing 23 years that I had of living, and realize that there was something that I've always wanted to do, but I never did it because I always had an excuse, and that was to serve our country. Particularly in a time of war. And so when I was 24, and at the time I was 24, signed the paperwork, shipped off to basic training when I was 25, which is rather fascinating, going through basic training with my 25-year-old and 18-year-olds drill sergeants are my age or somewhat potentially younger, actually, than me. But did that and was in the Army. I probably didn't mention that. Did a tour of duty, as you mentioned, over in Iraq between 06 to 07. So that was part of the surge itself. We did mostly night operations over there. Sounds a lot cooler than it actually is, but most of the things what we were doing was doing some convoy security, doing recon, some intel gathering, and then got back to the United States. We redeployed in September of 07, and then I was already stop-lossed at that point. So 2 months later, I was out of the military. And at that point, I thought I had everything figured out. I was going through everything in my brain, on my head when I was redeploying, wanted to get back in the business world, so I moved to Colorado Springs and started a franchise brokerage. So I got back into the business world and started a franchise brokerage, which essentially plays matchmaker between people that want to start a business but aren't really quite sure as to what direction they want to go. And then we would interview them, find out what they're best suited for, and then match them up with potential business opportunities or business models that are out there. And that went well until the market crashed at the end of 08. And then that's kind of what inspired me to actually use my post-9/11 GI Bill to get a degree, and then use that time to start getting into the tech world. And then that's where HyprLoco, the company that I founded, was born. And so we started that about 3 years ago. And today we are a location intelligence company. solving the line management challenges for the quick service restaurant industry. So not very sexy by any means, but it's a huge, huge $500 billion industry. We've raised about $2 million so far in venture-backed company. We're about 15 employees right now, and as Josh mentioned, also co-founder of Cave. How's that?
Great. So let me start us out with a question. I think a big talking point for people when it comes to business and veterans is that veterans are great leaders. Veterans know how to be leaders. That means they're going to be great in business. Is that really true? Is it really leadership that explains the success, or is it really leadership that really helps you get where you are? Is it really leadership, or is it something else?
Well, for me personally, I think the two biggest things that people miss when they get out of the military is a sense of purpose or mission driven, and then the second piece is camaraderie. So being an entrepreneur, the three main objectives or the three main roles that you have as a CEO in any company for that matter, particularly at the startup phase, is providing the vision for the company, so essentially the mission itself, finding the people to carry out that mission, and typically it's not always the best individual that's out there, but it's the best individual that's available and that you can afford. And you can also make believe, or can make them believe in your vision itself. And the third piece is finding a way to pay that person to carry out that mission. So those are the three primary responsibilities as a CEO. And if you go back to the military and being a leader in the military, I mean, you obviously need to have a mission and find the right people or motivate the right people to carry that out, but then also provide the resources for them to be effective and be successful. So there are a lot of things that do translate over. One thing that I haven't found effective is making people do push-ups or flutter kicks in the office. Okay. Paul is over there, our community manager, taking pictures. And have you done push-ups in the office? It was actually funny because today we had our all-team meeting, and our COO was 6 minutes late, and he came in, and he immediately started just doing push-ups on the ground. He didn't make it quite to 60 because we do 10 per minute, but I thought he was going to have a heart attack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Josh, what do you think about leadership? Do you really think that that's what makes veterans successful in business?
My short answer is not at all. I think leadership is the adjective that is easy to assign, or the noun, I guess. It's easy to assign to veterans, so you don't have to explain all the nuanced, intangible things that I think they actually derive from their service. So I think there are a litany of characteristics that you get from serving, from being thrust into uncomfortable situations with people that you didn't choose, to fulfill a mission that you didn't choose, and to have to execute without question or without fail. I think you learn a lot from that, and you take a lot away from that. You can call that leadership, but I think it's a lot of intangible characteristics and traits that you accumulate by being put in hard situations and by having to face adversity and risk quite often in military service. So I think a lot of those apply quite naturally into entrepreneurship. I think you can take a lot of those lessons learned and apply them fairly directly, but I think leadership is just kind of the pat or easy way for us to explain away what military personnel gain from serving.
So Nick, you mentioned a sense of purpose, right? So thinking about leadership and a sense of purpose, and then you're mentioning that there's a lot of nuances and intangibles that maybe we can't even put words on about why veterans are great at business. When we think about sense of purpose, it seems to me that veterans, especially as they transition out of the military, really are seeking a sense of purpose, because while in the military, I think you have a pretty clear sense of purpose, and I think all military members have had that clear sense of purpose throughout history, right? So there was this guy who was a psychiatrist named Alfred Adler, and he always talked about, this a long time ago, and he didn't talk about it in English, but he always talked about how people were driven by this goal, right? Sometimes they knew what that goal was, sometimes they didn't, but there was a sense of purpose that was driving them, right? And it could drive them in the right direction, or it could drive them in the wrong direction. And it seems to me that military members and veterans do what's arguably the most socially responsible thing that there is, and they voluntarily join the military. They voluntarily put themselves into a position where they could be hurt, killed, or worse, right? And so you could argue that that is the ultimate socially responsible decision. So these people, military members and veterans, us, we have this sense of purpose while we're working and while we're in, but then we get out, and a lot of times, many veterans struggle, right? They hit stumbling blocks, they get into trouble, they can't figure out if they want to go to school or get a job, and they seem to lack that sense of purpose. Maybe one of you can talk about how you found your sense of purpose as you transitioned out, and did you hit a stumbling block? Did it take you a while to figure out what that purpose really was, or did it kind of just fall into place for you?
Well, so without getting too meta or sociological, I think we've evolved to need a sense of purpose and to survive and to form tribes and to do these things that the military gives you a framework to do. And I think more and more in kind of post-industrial culture globally, we don't have the opportunity to do that, right? Like we're pecking away at keyboards and cubicles, right? Like that's not what we evolved to do. And so I think it's a bigger cultural thing. It's not just a veteran problem. It's that's why depression and anxiety is up around the globe, not just among veterans, but among human beings, because we're not able to satisfy some of the things that we are sort of genetically required to do, right? And so, so certainly, when we find that sense of purpose and that fit in the military, and we get to actually do some of the things that our genes are telling us to do, to then be thrust back into a world that's a little bit cold and isolated, and it doesn't have that sense of purpose or camaraderie or shared mission, I think it's a shock to the system for many of us, right? So, while I certainly didn't share some of the hardships that other veterans have, that experience of being thrust back into a world that doesn't make sense and doesn't give you that framework or sense of purpose, I think is equally real. And I would say, I transitioned out 10 years ago, but I would still consider myself in transition in many ways, right? We're still wrestling to try to find that fit and sense of purpose. I think the closest that I've gotten is being able to build and deliver something that serves veterans, that gives back, and that is sort of reciprocating and finding that community again. So I'm still searching for it, I guess is the short answer. But I think working with Patriot Bootcamp and with CAVE and doing things like this is the closest that I've gotten to finding that sense of purpose again.
Nick, do you think that the military prepared you to transition out to get to where you are now? Or do you share sort of this similar feel that you had to come out and figure it out on your own?
Well, I can answer that pretty simply. And the reality of it is humans are not wired traditionally to take another person's life. You have to be rewired to do that. And while doing that is somewhat easy over a period of time, coming back from war and experiencing things, or even if you never took somebody's life, you were still in that position. And there are certain situations where maybe you had to decide whether or not to pull that trigger. That'll take a toll on you. Many different things that'll happen in war. The reality is that when you get back, there is no way, or there is no system in place to rewire the brain back to where it was pre-military. And I'm not an extremely intelligent person, so I'm not even sure if that's possible. But it wasn't available when I transitioned, and I'm not aware that it's available today to rewire somebody's brain. And so you get into those situations as to where now you're back into society, and you've seen things that are just entirely out of this world compared to other people in general, to where when you're in war, you really have one job, and that is to make sure that you come back alive. And it's also to make sure that you have your fellow brothers and sisters come back alive too. It's pretty much the main thing in your mind for an entire year straight. Or if you're in the Marines, only 6 months, but that's cool, man.
Or 9 months. We're not
Or
going to
9
rope
months.
everybody
Okay.
into one thing.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I lost my train of thought. I was dogging on the Marines.
That's what happens.
I'm acting like a Marine right now, I
I'm
guess.
about to give you a stumbling block.
All right. Oh. Yeah, I completely lost my train of thought on that one. But the reality of it is that there isn't really anything out there that prepares you to re-enter into the civilian world. There are programs like ACAP or TAPS, depending on which branch of service you're in. I think Marines are, what do you guys have for transitioning? SEPs, yeah. But it's resume writing, and it's how to do interview skills, how to do a job search. That's pretty much it.
So not how to found a business or how to go
Not
into
how to
business
found a
for
business,
yourself.
no.
So you get out, and what made you decide, oh, this is what I'm going to do? Is it because you have this long history of liking to be in business, and that's just what drove you back to this, or was it your education? What took you to business after transitioning out?
So before I joined the military, I mean, keep in mind too that before that I was a partner for a very short period of time, but I had been in the business world for a little bit at least. And my goal when I joined the military was obviously to join the military, become a non-commissioned officer, serve overseas, no tour of duty, and then get out and then get back into the business world. So that was my goal even before I went in.
Okay. Josh, was your goal to go straight into business before you went in, during? At what point did you say during this transition, I'm going to go into business, I'm going to start a company, I'm going to be a chief operating officer of a successful company?
Well, I guess to be totally candid, I haven't started a business, right? So there's only one entrepreneur on the stage right now, and it's Nick. But I've spent the bulk of my civilian career now working with earlier stage companies and startups. So no, I mean, there wasn't a blueprint laid out, right? And I went through the same SEPs and TAPS process that everyone else presumably went through as they transitioned out here. So, I mean, I feel like the SEPs and TAPS program or process as it currently exists gives you really two paths, and it's go get a job, the first job you can find, or go get to school and get a 4-year degree, and everything will work out. And so there's not a lot of creativity built into that. There's not a lot of diverging options. It's sort of the two tried and true paths, and I don't think that sort of curriculum or SEPs, TAPS partners have had an overhaul in decades, and so I don't think it really accounts for the small minority of folks who think they're built for something else, and they might have the urge to do what Nick's done and build a company. So there are organizations like Patriot Bootcamp now who serve that need, and that's sort of the intent of what we do, is to say there is another option. We realize that veterans, in many ways, have a predisposition or are hardwired to be good at building businesses. And so we've sort of built a pathway or a mechanism that they can explore that in a safe way among other veterans, and decide in a relatively short amount of time whether that's the optimal path for them.
Sure. So you mentioned 4-year education, right? And we're at a university right now where there's a lot of 4-year education being offered. All three of us have at some point used the post-9/11 GI Bill to help fund some portion of our education, which we'll all agree, I think, is a fantastic benefit. Now, if not a 4-year education to work in business, is there an alternative to that? Is there an alternative way to use your GI Bill? Is there an alternative way to get into business without having to go sit through some classes that you may not be interested in or that may not ever actually apply to business?
Well, certainly. I mean, there's a litany now of non-traditional education options that have now applied for and been awarded GI Bill eligibility. I think we have 4 or 5 of the first coding programs here in Colorado that are GI Bill eligible. So I think more and more there's a critical mass of non-traditional education pathways being forged for veterans to use their GI Bill to sort of pursue alternative paths. And I guess I would defer to Nick as to whether sitting in a classroom is the best way to prepare for the mechanics and rigors of starting a business.
Wow. I guess the short answer. Now, keep in mind, I never got an MBA, so I only got a 4-year degree. Did it prepare me to start a business or a company? For me personally, no. However, the experience and the classes and the things that I learned, number one, did not hurt me whatsoever, and number two, it did help me think through problems and look at things a different way. There are many things that you experience, obviously, in college and working with teams, and same thing you learn in the military, for that matter. But for me personally, the best experience that I've received has been on-the-job training. It really has. There is nothing that can prepare you for what's coming down the pike when you start a business. There's so many variables, and so many of them are uncontrollable, and you have to be able to adapt and overcome them, and truly believe in the mission or the vision that you've laid out, not only for yourself but for your employees, for your partners, for your investors. That's critical. And it's really considered like it's a roller coaster ride, is what entrepreneurship is. You will have highs and lows multiple times in the same day. And it happens over and over and over again. Or like yesterday, there's some things happen. It's like, geez. And then today, it's like amazing. And, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I know it's on the calendar, but I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what phone call I'm going to get. I don't know what email I'm going to get. And it may not be with partners. It may not be with your investors. It may not be with your customers. It could be internal matters. Something could happen to one of your employees that you have to deal with on a personal level, because number one, they're part of your family now, but number two, you've got to make sure that person, his responsibilities or her responsibilities aren't dropped at the same time. And that's a delicate balance, because you've got to look out for the best interest of your company, but at the same time, you've got to make sure that employee is okay. And so, I'm recently dealing with that, and I didn't know how to deal with it at first. Matter of fact, believe it or not, I called my mom and I said, "Mom, I'm dealing with this. I don't know what to do." But she had some really good advice, and I know she was the right person to call with this particular situation. So, college is outstanding, but I just don't think anything can prepare you for the unknowns with starting a business. I just truly don't.
So let me ask you, as an entrepreneur, I was talking with a veteran the other day, and this veteran went to business school. He got his MBA at a well-known program. And I said, "Do you have any interest in hearing this talk about entrepreneurship?" He said, "No, not really, because there's a set of tried and true methods to be an entrepreneur. You don't need to have anybody tell you these. You can just read about them, and that's how people have gotten to where they are." Is that true? Is there a set of tried and true methods to be an entrepreneur? I'm going to wager it's not, because everybody's not an entrepreneur. But is there any validity to that statement? Is there anything tried and true to go from nothing to something in business?
Well, first of all, what branch was he?
I will not disclose that.
I had to ask.
Say it's the Coast Guard, but
Coastie. He's a Coastie?
No, I wasn't. Really
we call them puddle pirates. No. The short answer is no.
Okay.
He should not pursue his education any further, because it's not doing him any good.
Okay.
He's wasting his money at that point.
No tried and true method to being an entrepreneur.
Well, you can learn from people's mistakes. You can read people's biographies. You have mentors. You have advisors. I have a monthly founders group. We call it the founders therapy group, because every month we sit there and we have problems, and then we address it to the group, and the group gives feedback, and hopefully somebody in the group has gone through it before. But the way that they handled that problem, the way they overcame it, It may have worked for them at that time with that particular situation at that particular company, but it may not be applicable whatsoever to your current situation. So there is no blueprint, particularly in the age of technology.
How does technology change? How does that play into this?
Well, I mean, technology in itself. I mean, technology in the fact of, well, I mean, how does your business operate on a daily basis? What is the product or service that you're taking to market? Is it technology oriented? Is it service oriented? You know, basically, with technology is that it's constantly evolving. So, if somebody was a developer, for that matter, came from a coding school, and solved a problem this way and gave advice to somebody 5 years later about how he solved this particular problem, well, his problem is not going to be solved because it's so outdated for the solution that he provided at that time. And that's what I mean.
Sure, okay. So maybe, Josh, maybe you could tell us a little bit about Patriot Bootcamp. You've mentioned that a few times and what that is and how that might help me as a veteran if I'm just transitioning out or if I've been out for a while and I'm wanting to get involved in business or started in business. What can Patriot Bootcamp do, or maybe tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Well, we're actually fortunate to have the founder of Patriot Bootcamp, Taylor, here in the audience. Hi, Taylor. So Taylor launched Patriot Bootcamp 6 years ago with the help and support of the Techstars community. And what they were able to do is really distill down the essence of 3 months of the Techstars program and curriculum into a 3-day crash course boot camp designed explicitly for veterans. So really a safe place for veterans to come, validate their ideas, test the waters, receive one-on-one time with seasoned entrepreneurs and founders and executives as mentors, receive instructor-led, content and education, and begin to build camaraderie and community again with other veterans who are also exploring entrepreneurship. So, and I'd argue that last point might be the most important, is that and Nick's actually one of our early alumni of Patriot Bootcamp as well. So he took HyprLoco through, and was it the very first cohort?
Yeah, it was the very first one. I don't even think the name of the company was HyprLoco at that point, though. I think it was some batshit crazy name. I'm not really quite sure.
Still is.
Yeah, still is.
So since 2012, we've actually brought. We'll be doing our 10th program actually in San Antonio next month, and after that program, we will have graduated 600 veterans and military spouses through our program through the years. They've gone on to raise over $50 million in venture capital, hire over 1,200 employees, and slightly less than half of them are still operating their business. But I think the data point that we're equally proud of is that roughly 60% of those people who went through our program decided in 3 days not to become entrepreneurs, and that's a pretty good outcome too, right? Particularly for veterans for whom the clock might be ticking on making a decision about the direction their life's going and what their career path looks like. So to be able to validate whether or not you're an entrepreneur and whether or not to pursue that path in 72 hours is a pretty valuable mechanism as well. So that's sort of the essence of Patriot Bootcamp. As I mentioned, we've run 10 programs in the last 6 years in 7 cities around the country. We'll be doing our first ever here in Colorado, preceding Denver Startup Week, at least for now, in September of 2017. So any of you who are interested in running through Patriot Bootcamp, shoot me an email or just keep an eye out for the application process in the coming months. We'd love to have you come through in September.
Great. So how have you two gotten together to form this thing, CAVE? You've also mentioned CAVE a few times, so we don't exactly have a working knowledge of what CAVE is. What is it? Why did you get together to do this? And what are you looking to do with CAVE?
I'll take that one if you want me to. Okay. So CAVE, again, is the Colorado Alliance for Veteran Entrepreneurship. And it's really in its formative stages right now. We're trying to figure out what CAVE is. At its core, it's sort of a cross-organizational, cross-disciplinary, just cooperative of people who are interested in helping create better pathways and reintegration for veterans in Colorado. around education, entrepreneurship, and employment. So we've really just sort of gotten the initial co-founders of CAVE together and kicked around ideas and built out a calendar of events for 2017, and that's really as far as it's gotten. The vision for it certainly is that it's sort of a clearinghouse and a safe place for veterans to come together at any time in Colorado. Right now we're housed out of the Commons on Champa at 1245 Champa Street, which is a free entrepreneurship space, which is a cooperative of Downtown Denver Partnership and a number of other partners, Colorado Technology Association, and others. But basically the point is that we're providing a place where veterans can come get help reintegrating, identifying resources or programs that could help them sort of find their path here in Colorado and equip them to be the next generation of economic leaders here in Colorado.
Anything to add to that?
That was well said,
That was.
Josh. I don't know if I should try to. No, I would say just from my personal mental health, absolutely. So here's how I got passionate about getting involved with CAVE and getting with you and some other people as well. And Paul Strickler back there, community manager of HyprLoco, who's been a pivotal contributor to the founding of CAVE itself. But it was really that there were a lot of people that organizations that I was involved with or companies that I knew, or even gyms for that matter, that wanted to do something for the veteran community, that wanted to give back. And it got to the point to where I wanted to help, and I sit on the board of advisors now from one of them, but I just couldn't do much more than that. It was just too much. And also, I think really the last thing that Colorado needed was another 501c3 that was going to be for veteran, initiatives or veteran resources, which is great, but there's only a certain pool of funds you can draw from. And the more that are out there, the less that everybody gets, meaning which the less that everybody is effective. So for me personally, what I thought would be where I got inspired really is to what I call is a central hub for veteran resources, where the first 2 years people are transitioning out of the military, the most critical time, where they need to be able to find a pathway. It's going to be a good pathway or it's going to be a bad pathway. And for CAVE, for the short existence that we've been here, it hasn't been hundreds of people that we've got employed, but it's been a good handful of people that have gotten jobs through us, through organizations. Tech companies here in Colorado have hired out of the CAVE organization. But that's the biggest thing there, really, is just being able to create a place where veterans can come, where they can actually see eye to eye with people in that first 2 years. It's extremely challenging for veterans to have a conversation with somebody that has not gone through what they have gone through. So when we're talking, and then we have the resources. We can understand, like, hey, do you want to go to college? Okay, great. Well, that's pretty simple. But what about a coding school? Post-9 GI Bill, that can be used. 6 to 8 month course. You get out. Starting salary is about, I think, $75,000 to $80,000, and they have 94% placement success rates. Not bad. And the post-9 GI Bill pays for it, which is great. There's health and wellness. There's things that can help with mental health. That's a critical thing right there, suicide prevention. One of the things that helped me in my transition was not taking all the medication, being a pill popper that, unfortunately, I'll just say it, the VA loves to do, but rather surrounding myself with good people, but also through exercise. Exercise, eating right, treating yourself properly. For me, that was what made the most difference in my life personally. It wasn't the pills that made me worse, actually. So that was a longer answer than yours.
No,
But it was very detailed, though.
Indeed, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I would add a couple of points to that. One, while I think it's wonderful that there is a sort of a critical mass, particularly in Colorado. I think we have more veteran-focused 501c3s per capita than any other state in the country. That's great. It means there's scarcity and competition for resources in a major way. The point of CAVE is, I mean, we're not even incorporated in any capacity right now. We really want to provide a central clearinghouse or resource center to direct people to all of the other resources and veteran organizations, right? We're just a group of people who are trying to take on that initiative. And so, so we're not trying to create more noise. We're trying to reduce the noise and direct traffic a little bit better here.
Air traffic controllers.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I would say about CAVE, and then I'll stop, is that we'd love your feedback and ideas about what it should be or what the real needs are. I think, again, we don't want it to create more noise, but we do want it to create unique value here. And so any ideas that you have about what would be most valuable as a new resource or a different resource here in the state, it's sort of a blank slate right now in many ways, and so we'd like to build that.
So you're saying you're open for beta testing currently. If it's successful, and there's no doubt it will be, are you going to go open source? Are you going to let other people come in and copy your program or go help them set up their programs?
Good question.
For a small nominal fee.
Got to keep the
That's the entrepreneur in me, I'm sorry.
That's an amazing answer. You got to keep the programs going.
Well, there's brand integrity that does need to you need to adhere to, but I mean, as far as setting up satellite locations or licensed or franchise locations around the country, I think in theory it sounds great, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Sure. We can see how there could be a need, though, especially in some of these states with high veteran populations.
Oh, exactly. I would look at it this way. Colorado Alliance for Veteran Entrepreneurship is an MVP that's taking place here in Denver. So it's our MVP, and we'll see what happens from it. We'll learn from it. We'll gather feedback. We'll make it better, and then see if we can scale it.
I love it. I think that you mentioned a couple things that specifically interest me about mental health. One thing we know in this field of mental health is that people have much better outcomes, no matter what their issue or dysfunction is. They have much better outcomes whenever they have jobs, whenever they are contributing in some way to their community, contributing in some way to their family, contributing in some way to society. We get much better outcomes on all levels. And one thing that, as you're talking, I'm realizing is we have all three gone back into the service of serving other veterans, right? So we are doing work and doing great work, but it's in the service of our population. So we're kind of, I think that's just interesting to me as I'm realizing this. Why do you think it is that so many veterans are going back to work, but then they're wanting to do things in the veteran field with other veterans or for other veterans?
Well, I think by extension, we see that even among the entrepreneurs that we serve in Patriot Bootcamp. There's, I would say, less of a propensity of superficial and superfluous ideas. Like there's not nearly as much ad fodder, I would say, among our constituents or our entrepreneurs as there might be in the sort of general public. So I think there's something to that. I mean, we should probably do some research on it, but you should probably do some research on it.
My boss is here. Don't say that too loudly.
But I do really think there's something to that about returning from the things that we experience in service and having a different perspective on what's important and what's needed, where the gaps are, and how to spend our time as human beings. And so certainly I think those who have a bent towards entrepreneurship don't want to spend that effort in a superficial way. I think they want to do meaningful things and build things that matter in whatever way that is relevant to them. So yeah, I think it's no accident that many of us end up, I mean, I think it's no accident that there are more veteran service organizations in Colorado per capita than any other place. And we're the fastest growing millennial population. Like, I think these things are important data points that, you know, veterans want to serve other veterans. They're moving to Colorado. They're setting up 501c3s to try to serve veterans, right? Like that, it's just something we're sort of hardwired to do, I believe, as a result of spending years of our life in service.
What advice might you give a veteran who has started a 501c3 or is looking to start something to serve other veterans? but maybe they're struggling with it or it's not taking off. What, as both an entrepreneur and then putting these things together in terms of CAVE, how could that help me or help another veteran who wants to start a 501c3 or is struggling to do that or really struggling to get into this arena?
Sure. Well, I'm in my first year of nonprofit management myself, so I'm relatively new to it and learning the ropes. But the best piece of advice that I've gotten was at a 501c3 forum by the Colorado Nonprofit Association that I've been able to apply to Patriot Bootcamp and to CAVE, which is that a nonprofit doesn't matter and it shouldn't exist unless it's actively serving its constituents every day. So it doesn't matter what I want to build or what Taylor wants to build or what Patriot Bootcamp wants to build. It matters what veterans need and want, and that should be our core mission. So if veterans need and want it, and you're building it, then it matters, and I think it'll find its market fit. But if you're not gaining traction as a 501c3, then you're probably not acutely focused on how to best serve your constituents or who your constituents are.
Any thoughts on that?
About 501c3s?
Yeah, if I'm a struggling vet and I really just want to get involved in this space and help out other vets, but yet I can't seem to get this off the ground, what can I do?
Come to CAVE. I'm serious. It's a great starting point, though. It's run by people that are running running 501c3s. It's partnered with 501c3s. That's the whole purpose of CAVE, is to essentially try to find your purpose.
So in CAVE, you could help me start my 501c3 or keep it going, or maybe even help me go to work at another 501c3 or another company who has this sort of entrepreneurship in mind. So you could do both. You could help me with my business or with my charity or help me get placement?
That's a question for Josh to answer on the 501c3 part, but I think at the very least we would have a conversation with you and see what resources we have in our networks to try to get you in front of the right person that can guide you to a solution or an answer to your problem. If anybody in-house doesn't have that answer for you, but that's my personal take on it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I wouldn't say that we would necessarily have the expertise to tell you the answer, but I think we could direct you to the right resources to make sure that you get the right answer, or to help you validate your idea, or to find another organization to go work with that can sort of help you carry out the mission that you're intending to carry out.
So correct me if I'm wrong then, but at CAVE, are you helping me as a veteran understand how to blend the military culture that I know with the new civilian business culture? Are you helping me to understand that so that I can navigate this new civilian business world better? Because those two things, those cultures, I think sometimes just clash big time, the military and civilian culture. I think sometimes they fit together nicely, but the majority of the time I think they clash. So are you going to help me understand that, or help me understand how I can use my military skills or my leadership, or how to use that military culture that I have and blend that into the civilian business culture?
I think we'll get there. We're not there yet, right? I think we're still trying to define our MVP and validate exactly what veterans in this community want and need, and that's what we're going to build. So I wouldn't say that what you just described would be our core competency or area of expertise just yet.
Nick, whenever you started HyprLoco, did you notice a clash between the military culture you had just left or the military culture that you were part of and this civilian business culture whenever you started this business?
No, because my co-founder is a former Marine, and it was just the two of us.
Okay.
And we created the culture, so that wasn't an issue at all. We were actually joking around about this with our company the other day, and we looked around and we just kind of said, we're like a bunch of misfits. I mean, it's an interesting company, and Paul back there can agree with that. He's laughing right now. Yeah. But yeah, it's for us. My co-founder is a former Marine. He's the CTO of the company, and then actually the third person that we brought onto the company was Army. So we didn't have any outside influences at that time. However, though, as the company has grown, while I would have loved to have an entire company full of soldiers, airmen, Marines, and coasties, it's just not the case. But however, we are a pretty diverse company, though, and you have to take into account, like I talked about earlier, as to where you can't make people do push-ups in the office.
I tried that with my class, and
It doesn't work out for you.
Not even in school.
Some people are sensitive. Some people are
All right.
very
It
sensitive.
turns out.
And some of the names that we called each other in the military
Yes.
don't go over very well in the civilian world.
They don't respond to the knife hand.
They don't respond
or
to the knife
put in-
hand.
no.
Well, they just look at you like they're terrified, or at the very least, very confused. But no, you definitely have to adapt. But the important thing, though, too, I mean, the military, as being a leader, one thing that I've found myself is that every person is motivated differently. You have to speak to each person in a different capacity, in a different level. Some people can be motivated by, rah, rah, rah. Other people you have to speak softly to, and you have to know as to what to say, what not to say. And the same thing was in the military as well. It was, you had to motivate people to do certain things, and everybody reacted to things differently. From a squad leader, I guess, type down, but if you're a general, maybe a little bit different, but I was not a general by any means. Yeah.
Understood. So I really think that, Josh, you've put yourself in a great place to help work in this kind of program that graduates people like Nick, who then go found these amazing companies, right? And who serve as mentors and role models for other young veterans and service members who want to get out and do this. And then together you guys formed CAVE and are wanting to just absorb as many veterans as you can to really help them understand their strengths, how they can apply them in this environment, and how successful they can truly be. And so I don't see two better role models there for this than you guys. And so I really do appreciate you coming out tonight. And I think we've got some aspiring business students in the audience. We've got some entrepreneurs in the audience that might want to ask some questions. So maybe if that's fine with you, we'll take a few questions. Okay.
Roger.
So, Josh, Nick, thanks for sharing your perspectives. As I look and I see the young folks here, not like us maybe, but who are going to be entrepreneurs and may not be coming from a veteran's perspective, what would you tell them when they are talking with joining a veteran entrepreneur in their company? What should they expect? What are the pros, cons, and vice versa? If they have an entrepreneurial company and they're looking at veterans, what should they be looking for? What should they be cautious of, and why should they go that way?
Can you rephrase that question? So I think what you were asking is, what should they be prepared for when they go to work for a company that was founded by veterans, or they're going to be working alongside with veterans that are in the company because they're not veterans? Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, for the most part, I can only really speak to HyprLoco because I've never actually really worked in a large corporation. But I would hope that with any organization, number one, in Colorado, the tech startup scene in particular, is that you're going to be entering into an amazing workplace with amazing culture. And hopefully the young company that you join will grow into a very large company, and hopefully you get stock options in the company and you have an amazing exit. But as far as like HyprLoco goes, you would be treated with respect. When we bring people into the company, we always want to know where they're going to be where do they want to be in 5 years? And the reason as to why we ask that is because we want to make sure that their goals align with the company's goals. And if they're not advancing in their own careers and reaching goals and milestones that they want to achieve, then I'm doing a disservice to them. But it goes the other way as well, as to where if that person, whatever, does not tell me or is not honest with me, or doesn't let me know when things change as to what their goals are, then they're doing a disservice to me and to the company itself. So, but that's typically how we onboard people into HyprLoco, to make sure that they're moving in the right direction. But if you're working with fellow veterans, first of all, don't sneak up behind them. That's not cool. Don't drop books behind them either. Don't pop balloons in the office. But I don't know. I mean, I'm just rambling right now for the most part. I've never worked in large corporations. I don't know.
I have, for better or worse. I guess my advice to veteran entrepreneurs would be, I would think about it similarly to how I think about running a veteran service organization and what our sort of philosophies are. I think there's a real danger in insulating veterans among veterans exclusively, right? I think there's a tendency to do that because we feel safe and we feel a sense of connectedness and instant bonds, et cetera. But I think about all the teams that I've hired at larger organizations and even at smaller startups, and diversity is really important, right? Like having diversity of background and perspective and experience and thought. And so hiring really homogenous teams of all veterans, I think there's a real danger in that. So I think while there's a tendency and while it seems like a good idea, it's probably not a great idea, particularly for early stage companies, to just coalesce fellow veterans. I think having a lot of diversity in your early team is a good idea.
Okay, so this is a question that it's kind of funny. I was actually on a panel, I think about 6 months ago. Strickler once again was there and talked about diversity, and that was the end result of that was just kind of bizarre. But so you're exactly right though on diversity in your companies. You definitely want that because it definitely gives different perspectives. People have come from different environments, different walks of life. However, it is my belief that if you go back to what the goal is, what the job of a CEO is of a young company, it's to provide the vision, find the people to carry out that vision, and then find a way to pay those people. In a lot of cases, you're not going to be able to pay people very much, if at all, and they're going to be compensated through stock options. The people that you draw from, the pool of people you're able to draw from is very limited. So sometimes at the early stage, the best people that are available that you can afford may kind of all be the same. So I think there is this danger zone that if you try to be too diverse, that it can actually hurt your company in the early stages, just because of the fact that a lot of times you don't have a choice as to which people you get and which people you can buy into your vision. So, well, I agree with you on that one. There is a danger zone, though, in my opinion.
But as a young entrepreneur, the person running a company, you can have one of the values of your company to be diversity and reach for that as you grow and as you get bigger and as time progresses, because maybe you can't get it at the beginning, but that can be one of these values that you try to get to over 5, 6, 7 years in the company. I think those are some fantastic points there. Absolutely. You have another question?
Hi, my name's Daniel Kellen. I'm an MBA student here, also a veteran, and I'm involved with veteran service work now with Team Rubicon. I thought that was an awesome question. I just wanted to piggyback on what you all were saying there. For young people thinking about supporting veterans organizations or getting involved with that, I would say definitely do it, because you will get the best mentorship. You'll get attention to mentorship, because in the military, we really recognize that taking care of our people and promoting their individual growth is the most important aspect of getting the job done. So you'll also get diversity, and what else did I write down here? Really open spaces to communicate, and the comfort that, if you ever feel like you're not getting the right kind of leadership, you can say something about it, because that's a priority in the military, is that that the leaders are held accountable. So you can trust in that. The question that I had, though, was how do you all overcome some of the stereotypes when you're trying to communicate your veteran status, or mentor other people who are veterans that are trying to start a business, how can they best communicate veteran status without playing into some of the stereotypes, maybe some of the political bias that exists? We see a lot of that in the news right now, especially with some of the violence that's kind of been played up in the media as like caused by veterans. A lot of the public sees a lot of veterans as having PTSD no matter what their job was or what their experience was. They think of veterans' issues as like being very suicide related. So how have you guys overcome some of those issues?
Well, for me personally, I mean, just kind of more or less just socializing with family and friends in general public, or in the workspace itself. Yeah, I mean, so for me, as far as applying for jobs or whatever, that I haven't done or had experience with, because I just went out and starting companies myself. But but I can speak to families and friends and just colleagues in general, just business partners for that matter. It's a tough one. It's an absolute tough one. There's in my I guess my personal situation is a little bit different than most, but I've always found personally, just to be honest, they're going to be curious about your time in service, and you can talk about it. Talk about the positives though. Talk about how it's helped you in your own personal life, and how it's helped you in the business world, and how it's helped you in your job, and talked about how it's helped you want to give back. For me, that's personally what I always focus on, but I've never had to actually deal with that, particularly in a job interview type situation. Now, I would say though, raising money though, there are investors out there that do find value in veterans, but then there are some investors out there that are extremely nervous about investing into veterans, particularly a veteran at a CEO level. There's a lot of positives, but as you mentioned, there is that stigma of PTSD, and are they going to flip out? There's going to be workplace violence, and the reality is they only know what they see on TV, as you mentioned in the news, and unfortunately, veterans are played up to be kind of out there a little bit, to put it nicely. So, or victims. The thing is that we don't want to be portrayed as victims, not at all. At least I don't. I know Josh doesn't. I know you don't. But that is some of the times as to how we are portrayed. So, yeah, it's something we got to overcome. There's no question about it, and it's gonna take time.
Yeah, I wish there was a silver bullet or a better answer to this one. I've experienced it firsthand for sure. One of the disadvantages of being an HR guy is that when I get hired, I get to see all the interview feedback about myself. And I got hired as head of HR and recruiting at a company, and some of the feedback that I saw was that we wonder if this guy is going to be able to be autonomous and self-starting, if he's going to wait until he's directed to do things because of his military experience, right? And so, well, I probably could have sued him for that feedback. I didn't. And it's fair, right? Like I think we're just each individually charged with overcoming that in our own ways and our own experiences. And I think the only thing we can do is be steady and focus on being well and integrating ourselves and trying to shed some of the jargon and the intensity as best we can, and also try to retain some of the great intangibles that we took away from military service and apply those in meaningful ways in our careers. So I don't know that there's any, at least I haven't encountered any easier answer than that.
Great, we'll take one more question.
So we already kind of talked on it, sort of like the whole company culture, but that's obviously super, super important. to the success of a company as well as in the military, what would you say, like, more specifically, is like the one aspect of service culture that has helped you in whatever your venture is now?
Say service culture.
Or military culture.
Okay, military culture. Oh, I think for me is one thing I've made very clear to the entire company is just as I would go to hell and back for anybody that I served with, that I will go to hell and back not only for the people in the company, but also their family. And I believe that everybody is well aware of that. And I think that goes a long ways. And it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to actually had to have lived it. And that's, I think, the best thing that I have brought to the company from a culture perspective.
Complete loyalty.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I guess another fortunate or unfortunate byproduct of being the HR guy is that often you get tasked with a lot of the culture stuff. And so I've had to wrestle with that a lot. And like, I don't know that it necessarily relates to military service as much as it's just fundamentally the right way to operate teams and businesses is to make people feel valued and respected and heard. And so those are the three most important things to me. I think some of those we learn really well in the military. Some of them maybe not as much, but I think people are quick to think about like ping pong tables and and kegs and like the artifacts of startups and things like that when they think about culture. But like fundamentally, it just comes down to how you treat people and how you make them feel valued and the how you employ them or deploy them to do good work. And so I think we're trained well to do that in the military, to make people feel like they have an important role and to give them a sense of mutual respect. But in building team cultures, I feel like that's sort of what it amounts to.
And I might add to that, I heard you both kind of say this tonight without using this word. You talked, Nick, about kind of the today it's great, yes, tomorrow it might not be good, but yesterday it was bad and the day before it was great. Persistence. They teach you persistence in the military, that you don't give up the mission no matter what. No matter what things have been thrown in your way on the mission, you don't give up. And I think you both have exemplified that persistence. The other thing I think is perception. They teach you in the military that even the smallest things can make the biggest difference. And I'm assuming probably truthfully that you need to have both persistence and this perception to build a business or to maintain a business or to sustain a business, because even those small things at the end could make or break it.
Attention to detail.
Absolute attention to detail. So thank you so much, both of you, for your attention to detail, for coming out tonight, and for giving us all some great information. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's give one more round of applause to Dr. Hyde for his wonderful moderation. As we head into 2017, we couldn't be more excited with what's happening with Project X-ITE. I mentioned earlier, for the students in the room, we're launching our first of our Project X-ITE experiments in spring quarter. So if you have any questions, I'd love for you to come talk with our faculty director, Dr. Rutherford, about that. Really a chance to get deep inside of entrepreneurship, inside of high growth companies here in Colorado, and really get in the throes of what it's like to be in some of the circumstances that Nick's in every single day. So really encourage you to take some time to do that. On upcoming events that we have a jam-packed kind of first quarter. We have 3 pitch competitions that are kind of all in various stages of deadlines. The ASU Open Innovation Challenge, $100,000 Western Region Innovation Challenge pitch competition. If you're interested in that, please see Nina Sharma in the back, and she'll kind of be the doer of all things challenges. We also have the Discover Challenge, which DU, CU, CSU, CC, and I'm forgetting one, Air Force Academy, because Hark is here. Yes, he's right here. We're hosting a design challenge in partnership with Fidelity Labs to rethink the future of health and wealth. $20,000 of prize money is up for grabs to student teams. Grand prize is $10,000, so we highly encourage you to get involved in that. And then last, our very own DU Pitch competition is coming up in February, and Stephen Miller, who's helping lead that, and Daniels College of Business, would love for you to talk with him about that and any of the student ventures out there. Get queued up to pitch at our very own pitch competition, our 7th annual this year, so we're really, really excited about it. In terms of speaker series that are coming up, next month we have a keynote Future of the Professions on February 22nd. We'll be announcing that very, very soon, followed immediately the next day on the 23rd with our Future Professions Summit. Lots of details to come around that. And we have a really exciting partnership with the United Nations. We're bringing 13 United Nations entrepreneurs from around the world to DU for 4 days to do a United Nations Solution Summit. And please see Nina Sharman if you want more information about that. But it's a chance for us to do a 4-day boot camp and for students, faculty, and our community to deeply engage in solving some global problems right here on campus. So we're really excited about it. So that brings us to the end, and thank you very much for enlightening us the benefits of veteran entrepreneurship. I think the questions are outstanding, and I think as we walk away, it's really clear that the leadership training, the mission focus, and that art of execution is something that really stands apart when we're talking about veteran entrepreneurship. And I love the closing with persistence and perception. I think persistence and perception in any endeavor, regardless of business, are absolutely critical. And I think there's a lot we can learn from our partners who have been serving our country and who are the true patriots that lead us not only in business but abroad. And we commend you for your service and thank you very much. One more round of applause for our incredible veterans.